Welcome, friends. Thank you for joining us this day as we continue studying the book of Revelation, the book written by John, the beloved disciple to the seven churches of Asia. In our study today, we're looking at the 19th chapter, a very significant chapter. It begins by recording the four alleluias of those that were the oppressed people of God, of heavenly beings that were sympathetic to God's people that suffered at the hands of wicked government, and of those that were creatures that were ones that were glorifying God around his throne. And the final voice that called was, all ye that fear God, and all ye his servants. And a tumultuous voice was heard, shouting, Alleluia. And then was heard a voice from the throne that says, Blessed are they that are bidden to the marriage supper of the Lamb. As the vision continues, the next scene that we see in that vision is a white horse, and one that sits upon that white horse. And that one that sits upon that white horse is one that is arrayed in white garments, white and pure linen, and he has a crown with many diadems. His eyes are like a flame of fire. His name is faithful and true. He's called the Word of God. And then he's also described as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And with him are the armies of heaven as they seek to do battle with these forces that have brought so much hurt and so much injury to the people of God. And in the 20th or the 19th chapter, the writer speaks about this conflict, saying ultimately, And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat upon the horse and against his army. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that had wrought the signs in his side, wherewith he deceived them that received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped the beast, and them that worshipped his image. And these two were cast alive into the lake of fire. The record declares that the rest were ones that were killed with a sword. And the birds of the air were filled with the flesh. For the voice had called as they began to engage in war to all the birds of the heavens of prey to come and fill their bellies with the flesh of captains, of kings, of those that were strong men and mighty. And the chapter concludes with the birds doing just that. When we look at this 19th chapter and this scene that is described of the beast and the false prophet in battle against the one that sat upon the white horse, we're looking at that it's called the Battle of Armageddon. Now, it's not mentioned there, but there is one time that the word Armageddon is mentioned. It's back in the 16th chapter. And in the 16th chapter, the same parties are involved, except here the beast, the false prophet, are engaged in a conflict with men. There were, in the 16th chapter, the record of bowls of wrath that were poured out upon this one that had brought so much hurt and injury to the people of God. And as we look at the opening, or rather the pouring out of the sixth bowl of wrath, it was poured upon the river Euphrates to dry it up, to make possible for the engagement of battle with the kings that come from the sunrise. And they were in battle against the beast, the false prophet, and the red dragon. And coming out of the mouth of the red dragon and of the beast and the one that was the the earth beast, the false prophet, were evil spirits in the form of frogs. And so as we look at chapter 16, the record says, and they were called together to the place called Armageddon. Armageddon mentioned one time in the New Testament, there in chapter 16. But the battle that was in preparation in chapter 16 finally unfolds in the 19th chapter. And you will notice that there are one, the sea beast, and the earth beast, the false prophet, and the vicious Roman Empire, oppressive in their nature. And also, the force behind them was the great red dragon. They are engaged with the one that sat upon the white throne, upon the white horse. And the heavens armies were engaged with him in battle against these forces. But then when we look and we see, it was the kings from the sunrisings that came. As the sixth bowl of wrath was poured upon the waters of the river Euphrates to make ready for the kings from the sunrisings to do battle with the beast, the false prophet. You see, Jesus doesn't himself engage in a physical battle. This battle that ensued between the beast and the false prophet was a battle that was engaged between two human forces. The beast and the false prophet, these were human forces, and they were engaged in a battle against the kings that come from the sunrising, the Parthenians, and their allies with them as they did battle against the wicked empire, Rome. But it was the battle of the Lord, because these kings from the sunrisings were agents for God in measuring up and fitting to the measure the wrath and the judgment that belonged to this empire for the hurt and the injury that it did. Notice that the record says in this 19th chapter that the beast and the false prophet were ones that were cast into the lake of fire. And we go back the centuries to Daniel, 6, 7 centuries before, when he prophesied the events that transpired there. Daniel had seen 4 beasts that came out of the sea. And the last was a diverse beast, a beast that had made war with the saints of God, and diverse in his nature. And the record says that as far as that beast was concerned, that he was killed, Daniel said, and his body burned with fire. And this was the end of that 4th kingdom. Now fast forward 600, 700, 800 years, and we see the fulfillment of it. Still predicted for yet in the future in the book of Revelation, the 19th chapter. There, as the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, faithful and true, the Word of God, and the armies in heaven do battle with the red dragon and with the beast that came out of the sea and the false prophet. They do so through the agency of those kings that came from the sunrising. Rome was overthrown. She was brought to an end. And you know, my friend, since that day and the end of the Roman Empire, the world has never been oppressed by a universal power that ruled as Babylon, as the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians, as the Grecians, and all of these component of that final vicious empire, the Roman Empire, in its oppression of the people of God. Armageddon is not future. Armageddon is long since past. And so as we look, we've seen the destruction of enemies of God, God's people. We've seen the fall of the Babylon. We've seen the fall of the harlot. We've seen the fall of the empire and emperor worship. One more enemy, he who was the mastermind behind it all, the great red dragon. He's yet to be dealt with. But the Lord does deal with him. And that'll be the study of our next lesson. Join us as we see what happens to the great red dragon. Thank you, friends.